I cannot believe that it has been 3 months since the last behind the scenes extravaganza here. So let me go ahead and kind of get set up. I'm switching over to the comments since it's been a while. I want to make sure that everything is coming through okay because I kind of had a few audio glitches before I got going here. So I'm hoping that everything is coming through okay to you guys. So if you could let me know in the comments, that would be great. If you've never been to a behind the scenes before, the channel has grown considerably just in the last 3 months. So you guys may not have seen the playlist. In short, the behind the scenes videos are just that. It is a way for me to essentially show you guys how the videos are made. Not that anybody really cares about that, but rather I just thought I would create these videos and turn the camera on while I'm doing it. And then it kind of took off. A lot of phone calls would come in because I'd open up the phone lines. A lot of you would hang out in the chat. So that just kind of stuck, but I haven't been able to do it in the last couple of months. And so I thought, hey, I've got a little bit of time today and why not? So I see a couple comments there sounding okay. Yeah, I don't know why in my ear here, maybe my earpiece is going bad. I'm not really sure. But anyway, I'll go ahead and deal with that. So hopefully the phone calls will come in. I will open up the phone lines. I'll let you guys kind of guide this. So I'm going to go ahead and do a short video. So again, you're going to see like a little bit of a segmented video. I'm going to give an intro in the middle of this video and then a closing, but then I'm going to come right back to you. So I will let you know when the actual video is done. But just know if I do record a couple segments, you'll see a couple goodbyes from me. Just know that that's where I kind of go in. I download this whole video, snip the beginning, snip the end, plop it in, and those are the videos that you see on the channel. But the behind the scenes stay up because we do a lot of fun kind of behind the scenes stuff with the phone calls and questions. And essentially it's like an Ask Me Anything type of video. I'm sure you've seen those on different channels and so on and so forth. So I'm going to start with kind of a short video, which is the update on the Obama story. Now, when I say update, you may have said, well, I've already heard this because I just saw a video yesterday or whenever I dropped that. Just so you know, it actually is an update today. If you didn't see it on social media, I'm going to give kind of a video breakdown now because as I've learned many, many times over on this channel, a lot of you don't use social media. So bear with me here just 1 second. And I'm going to make sure that I have this shared correctly here before we get going. So I'm just going to go through this. You'll see a couple other windows open. Those are the segments that I'm hopefully going to get to today. So just go ahead and ignore those. You guys don't like my bars and tone, so I have to give somewhat of a visual. Sorry, I'm making you dizzy. But you guys hated that bars and tone, so I stopped doing that, but I had to give myself a visual. Hold on 1 second, sit tight. We're just going to record this first one as more people get in here, so on and so forth. Hey, thanks for that study of UAPs. Yes, I am live. That was my proof. I thought I'd pull up your comment, but I really appreciate that. You guys in the 23 minutes, no, but it was funny when I created a video that ended up being 23 minutes in length, and I posted it out there, put my TRT, the total runtime, in the post, and then people thought I was doing clickbait because I didn't even realize it was the 23 minutes. And they thought I was going to air this infamous 23-minute UFO video regardless. No, not that video. I think that's going to be a legend for years to come. Bruce, don't give that guy any idea. It's good to see you, Bruce, by the way. Batman himself is in the house. Yes, every time I do this show, this Howard Stern guy calls. And by the way, Mr. Howard Stern, if you're listening, check your LinkedIn account. Because you never wrote me back. I'm pretty hurt, but I tracked you down there. So you got a message from me. So please, nobody cares about your phone calls anymore. It was funny in the beginning, but not no more. All right, give me 1 second here. Hey everybody, John Greenwald here with an update for you on a story that I just kind of brought to you a couple days ago, but there's a little bit of an update. And as promised, as I said in that video, if something were to happen, I'd bring you the update, and here we go. This is about the Obama UFO files story. It got a lot of media attention. I'll be completely honest with you, I was very surprised at that media attention simply because this was more of an update on what is there, but I don't know exactly what is there. And yet just the pure notion that something is at the Obama library that deals with UFOs and potentially OSAP and ATIP, well, I broke all that down for you recently in a video, and I have a little bit of an update. I've been working with the library to try and whittle down my request. So therefore, it will not take 16 years, but hopefully something a little bit more reasonable, not only for my old age, but all of us who want to know a little bit more about what is at the library. So let me go ahead and just pull up a screen here of the tweet update. It's got some graphics here, which is why I wanted to pull it up, or at least one, which is the letter. This is the small tweet thread that I put out there today. If you don't know what a tweet thread is, because I know a lot of you don't use social media, don't worry about it. It's just an update on social media, kind of breaks it down in different tweets. But the update is that, if you recall, there were 3,440 pages along with over 26,000 digital files. That comprised of what they told me later, over 130,000 pages of material that was pertaining to my request for UFO information, OSAP, ATIP, so on and so forth. So what you do with the FOIA, for those who are curious about this part of the process, is you try and whittle it down. So when you ask for this, and that's 16 years, you try and start cutting things out so you can get it to somewhat of a reasonable length. 16 years may become 10, 5, 2, who knows. But if you end up in a different queue, that like queue as in a line, if you end up in a different queue, that is kind of what you're going for. That's what you're looking for. So I've been communicating with them, and I submitted an amendment to omit all publicly available information. This would include, but not be limited to, newspaper articles, press releases, press statements, and in essence, all what they would consider already publicly available material. And to my surprise, because a lot of people were coming at me saying this is all just going to be newspaper article forwards and mailing lists and so on, it didn't move the needle much. That in itself, in my opinion, made it worthy enough to at least update you guys on what was going on. Here was the actual letter, just so you guys see. I omitted the newspaper clippings, press releases, other publicly available material. 3,440 pages stayed the same, and it dropped by about 6,000 electronic files. I don't have page count yet. Again, the grand total was over 130,000, so let's just call it 100,000, but 20,879 electronic files remain. So to me, why is that a big deal? Well, again, there were some, I don't even call it skeptical, but more of the those that are out there trying to say, oh, John just thinks he found something, but it's going to be a bunch of newspaper articles. We can now dispel that myth because that is no longer in the scope of the request. The other thing that I'm trying to whittle down, and we're going to see where it ends up, is if I omit the letters that were submitted to the White House about UFOs. Will that be some? I'm sure it will. Is that 100,000 pages of digital files? Highly unlikely, in my opinion anyway. Who knows? We'll find out. But anyway, that's the second thing that I'm trying to whittle out. And also to give you guys a little bit of some insight that I didn't talk about on social media yet, I submitted another amendment today to request a expedited request. I was apprehensive to even put that out there, but since we're all, kind of having fun here on the, if you're watching the behind the scenes or the cut video as this goes out with an update, there you go. What that does is it then bumps me to the front of the line. And one of their requirements for you to be granted a expedited treatment is you have to show immense media interest and your ability to disseminate the information. Now, I believe that this last week, more than all else about this story, has shown us how much media interest there is. From Vice News to Newsweek to Microsoft Networks News, MSN News. You've got all sorts of news outlets that have covered this around the world and in different languages. So I believe that my amendment put up a very good case to say there is a big interest in this. Because, and I was blunt in the amendment, essentially saying, I'm paraphrasing here, I didn't show anybody anything yet. It was just the mere idea, and that mere idea garnered the media attention. Why? Because the media and the world wants to know more. That is the pure definition of what they are seeking. If they deny it, I will appeal it, because there aren't many topics that you post something out there about the idea of something existing, and then boom, it goes around the world and translated in different languages. Although I was surprised at that, it does show the thirst for this information. The other half of it was the ability to disseminate the information. So not only is the media part of this and their role of informing the masses, but also my ability to then put it on the blackvault.com, serves about 24,000 people a day, and say, here's all the files. This is what it is. I believe I've met those requirements. That's why I submitted the amendment. So that's a little bit extra detail for you guys. I always like to give those extra tidbits for those who want to explore the FOIA, because getting a expedited grant is not always easy to do. But I think in this case, it's going to be worthwhile. And hopefully we'll see that 16 years come down to something much more reasonable. The last thing I will, the last thing I'll go ahead and update you guys on this particular case is why it was 16 years. So aside from the reality of their caseload and how long that it's going to take and how much information is there, before my case, they estimate that they have to review 4,350,000 pages that are relevant to other requests. Now, from what I understand, there are only like 80 some odd cases in line ahead of me. So I'm 86 or so down the list. For those 86 cases to yield 4.35 million pages, I hope that the Obama library realizes that they are able to push back on requesters. It's happened to me, and I'll encourage it if it starts to speed up. And if they push back on me, hey, it comes with my suggestion. Push back on the requesters, wind everything down so most of us don't die by the time this information comes out. That sounds like, oh, that's not a good tactic, because that's not being transparent. But look what happens when they take cases that may be overly broad. 80 some odd cases have yielded 4.35 million pages. That's not feasible, because it's only going to ramp up with the amount of cases that they're going to get. So I'm trying to, again, see how this process plays out, but hopefully whittle it down in the process to where I can get it expedited, but also the amount of information that comes back will be more pertinent to what we all want to see, and not just newspaper articles and so on. So that's why you start rounding that down. So that is the update. Hopefully that'll give you guys just a little bit more of an idea of how this process is unfolding. I know some people just think I am going to accept that 16-year estimate for some of this material. I am not, and this is the process unfolding. And as promised, wanted to bring it to all of you. So that being said, thank you all for tuning into this short update. This is John Greenwald Jr. signing off, and we'll see you next time. All right, so don't go anywhere. I told you, this is the behind the scenes stuff. Now, before I lose my voice, you are very welcome. I saw a super chat up here. Give me 1 second here. Bob Whittlefish. Your cause is of immense public interest. Look at this super chat. That's right, Bob. Very, very generous. Thank you so much for it. You rock. You rock, Bob. Thank you for that. For those who don't know, all super chats go right back into this channel and go right back into the research that brings you this channel. Sometimes the FOIA requests do cost money. Not all of them, but some of them do, especially this Obama request when it's going to yield that many thousands of pages. The National Archives are the worst when it comes to charging. So I'm not doing, any crazy fundraising for something I may have to pay 16 years from now. But just know I'm using that as an example. That's what happens. So a lot of requests I do have out do yield charges, sadly. So That's where all of the super chat money goes in. Anything left over, you'll see in licensed music, graphics packages, stuff like that to make this as, I don't want to say entertaining because hopefully it is entertaining, but I'm not trying to create a television show here for you guys, but rather be informative in an entertaining way. So hopefully you guys see all of that support come right back to the channel. And sometimes you'll see me pop up in other podcasts as well. If I have a little bit of leftover, I give it and pass it, pay it forward, pass it on and pay it forward. So you'll see me support some other podcasts out there that I feel are doing some great jobs and great work and all that stuff. So thank you for those who choose to support that effort. Deborah also coming in here with a super chat. So thank you, Deborah. Very, very much appreciate that. I will look out for questions. Obviously, super chats stick out a little bit more because on my screen, they're bright colors. Everything else on the chat just kind of flies by a little bit, but I'll look out for the questions as much as I can. If you can preface it maybe with an all cap question, colon, and then give me a question, I'm happy to do that. What I'm also going to do is I'll put the number on screen. I don't know if you guys want me to do this. The two other video segments I was going to record. Whoops, I forgot that. Bear with me here. I was going to give you guys an update on Luis Elizondo and his effort to combat the Pentagon statements. I find this kind of stuff fascinating. It was all behind the scenes. It was not public information. He did not post this. And so, let me go ahead and, okay. Before I lose my train of thought, all calls that come in, just know that you're going to be put in line. I might put you on hold. I apologize for that. I'll get to you guys. It will tell you what number line you are in. So first in line, second in line, third in line, and then I'll go ahead and pull you onto the show. Just make sure your volume is turned down. So I see those calls coming in. Always good to see that my phone lines are working because you never know with live. If something's going to go wrong, it's live. So the second video, Luis Elizondo. So again, it's just kind of a behind the scenes look at what he did. Again, that was not public knowledge. I discovered that through FOIA, just published it. There was another letter that was published last year. If you guys want that video, that's one option. I can do phone calls, which I'll go ahead and take a few right now. And then the other one was credit to Jack Brewer, who is a online blogger / journalist / researcher. I don't know what his preferred title is, so forgive me, Jack. But that being said, his blog is called the UFO Trail, and he got some documents from the DIA just today on OSAP and BASS. So an interesting look at that. So give me the chat on what you want to see next. Let me pull this up. Jables, thank you so much. Looks like this is probably from Australia. So thank you for that and for your support over there. Love your work, John. Keep fighting the good fight. What time frame do you think you can get the request response down to? I wish I had a good answer for you there, Jables. I'm trying to get it to a reasonable time frame, but I don't know. I don't have a target. Of course, ideally, everything would come tomorrow morning, but that's wishful thinking. So I really don't know. You have to get out of the queue that you're in, which for me is called a complex queue. They called it, it's some longer phrasing, but essentially it's a complex unclassified queue. So this is the unclassified material. And that's one thing I forgot to mention, but I'll tell you guys now. But to finish up that thought, Jables, you have to get out of that complex, go to the medium or the simple track to kind of get things a little bit sped up. But the problem is if you whittle it too far down, you're going to miss a lot of information that you want. So it's a double-edged sword. Do you want the information faster, but you don't get as much? Or do you want the information at a stack level that you want to see, but you're going to wait longer? Again, double-edged sword. I don't have the right answer on what it is, so I'm trying to find the happy medium. So wish I had a better idea for you. Let me go ahead and take a phone call here. If I can have you turn your volume down. Let me see. Who's this? Yeah, you're on the air. Who's this?
Matthew. I have one question for you, my friend.
Sure, no problem.
So it has to do with UFOs and nukes. I
Okay.
recently read Robert Hastings' book, and I found it to be very interesting. However, I'm not completely sold that it's extraterrestrial in origin. I'm thinking maybe there's some sort of blind testing or psychological operation that our government does on our own forces to test their mental stability as well as the equipment. So I want to get your opinion on whether or not you think some of this is possibly extraterrestrial, or is it just really some sort of psyops that our government does?
That's a great question. And I'm sorry, what was your name?
My name is Matthew.
Matthew?
Yep.
Okay, Matthew. So thanks for your phone call. So in short, I'm not convinced it's alien either. I can tell you that there are the documented incidents. I mean, you know, kind of the buzz lines here. There are documented incidents when it comes to these unidentified craft buzzing nuclear installations. The problem is sometimes the witnesses don't match up to the government documents. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not telling the truth. But where I'm going with this is it's very hard then to determine, what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with equipment malfunction like the military and government wants us to believe? Are we dealing with some other phenomena that is interfering with our nukes? And I'm not really sure. The obviously the book that you just mentioned has a lot of cases. Robert Salas comes to mind. I just posted some records from internally that showed that when Robert Salas did his National Press Club event last year, the Air Force actually reached out to him because they wanted to watch. And so for me, that again doesn't prove anything definitively, but it shows that even today, when that was written in 2021, the United States Air Force still wants to know what people are talking about. They want to know what type of information is out there. So that kind of stuff is intriguing to me. Was it really just for them to keep on top of the media inquiries? Or are they really looking at this information because they know there's a phenomena of some kind there, alien or not, but a phenomena that's been plaguing nuclear installations and the military as a whole for decades? So long-winded way of not being able to say, is it alien or psyop? But in the same respect, I think that there is an aspect that the military just does not know themselves. And I think a lot of people are in the mindset that the military is all-knowing and they're all powerful and they're hiding the truth from us and this and that. For me, I think it's a big possibility that they're just as clueless as all of us, and we just don't know. And they know that there's a real aspect to the phenomena. Finally, they're researching it. Will they lean the alien route? Probably not, at least not publicly. But I think that is at least a step in the right direction. But there are documents to support it, just nothing definitively to say either alien or psyop.
Yeah, you make some good points there. I'm just more skeptical when it comes down to these things sometimes, because I think that there's a lot of things that our government does that they obviously don't tell us, and it wouldn't surprise me if they were to conduct, let's say, a blind test or a psychops and not tell personnel involved in it. But when it comes down to the unknown incursions, I think we just need more evidence for that type of stuff. But it would be interesting to see, though, if it was extraterrestrial and why they would be doing it. But for now, I tend to lean more towards the psychops or blind testing. Having said that, though, that was my question, and thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem, and thanks for the phone call. One thing that I will add to that, because it is a great question, let's just speculate for a moment, which I always love to do. But again, friendly warning here, it's just speculation. There's no documents or anything to back this up. But rather, when you look at the idea that this potentially could be alien and that they care about our nukes, really sit down and think about, why would an advanced civilization care about our nukes? And care about us, and care about our, and care about if we destroyed ourselves or if we were at war. And I've said this analogy before on this channel, and I'll say it again. It's that anthill analogy. Do we march out into the middle of the Sahara Desert and plant our flag on an anthill, introduce ourselves as humans, that we want to share knowledge with them, and we're going to protect them from the war that they're about to have with a neighboring termite colony? No, it just doesn't happen. And I truly do believe, because I always get pushback from that analogy, but I truly do believe that the intelligence gap between us and an ant in the middle of the Sahara Desert is closer than to us and an intelligent civilization that's got a 1,000,000-year head start. So when they traverse the stars and they come here and they see, our piddly nukes in a silo that could potentially destroy us, who cares? Do you really think they care? I mean, if they are there and we are here, the universe is teeming with life. So I think that they would just be like, all right, let's move on, just like we would in the middle of the Sahara Desert. And I can keep going and with that analogy, but again, I think that whole idea and concept that they're trying to save us from ourselves, to me, is a little bit silly. I just don't see it. Bruce Wayne, Batman himself. Bruce, it's always good to see you, and thank you for your support. Bruce says, thanks for what you do. It helps separate fact from fiction. I appreciate that, Bruce. That's definitely my aim and goal with this channel. I know sometimes it upsets some people when I try and separate the fact from fiction, but that said, that's what it's all about here. So thank you for that, Bruce. Let me go ahead and go to the phone lines again. Who's this?
Hey, this is Deb with the Study of UAPs. How are you doing?
Hi, Deb. I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for calling. That was your comment I put on screen earlier, right?
I was actually asking about, my question was whether or not they're lumping in the aerospace documents that they have under Obama.
I'm sorry, say that one more time. You were wondering about what?
Okay, so I know that a lot of aerospace documents are open source from the Obama administration, and I'm wondering if they're trying to lump those in under UAP or UFO.
So I know what aerospace means, but what do you mean by aerospace documents? You're just talking about aerospace in general?
So when I did my research through the presidential libraries, I didn't do a FOIA request, but I took a look at what was available in the Obama administration in particular. There's a surplus of aerospace documents, including innovation in aerospace materials, etc., for aerospace usage. I was wondering if maybe you added that, like that you're not interested in particularly aerospace, that might reduce the numbers, because I'm wondering if they're lumping them in.
Gotcha. Okay, so now that I'm on the same page with you, thank you for clarifying that. So I don't believe that they're including that, and here's why. The video that I had posted, I think it was a couple days ago, on this channel before the update, they had broken down where they got their page count, and nothing in there was indicative that they were kind of pulling in other aerospace type technology. They zoned in on UFOs and UAPs. They zoned in on OSAP, and they zoned in on ATIP. What was interesting about OSAP was that they said they found no unclassified material. So that would support with the theory that you, or a suggestion that you're having, that it likely wouldn't be that, because if they were lumping in the aerospace material, they likely would be putting it there for the Advanced Aerospace Weapon System Application Program. Yet they're saying that they found nothing. The one thing I forgot to say in my video too, and before I forget a third time, really quickly, all these numbers that we're talking about are just the unclassified material. The classified material, should any exist, they don't have numbers yet. So I also had learned that today, which I thought was pretty fascinating, because there's this much unclassified material. That's pretty amazing to me. But in addition, if there's classified material, that also is coming. So I didn't want to forget again about that point. But to go back to your question, yeah, I honestly, because of the scope of my request, I don't think that they would broaden it to that and pull that in. And then after I clarified with them and had them break it down a little bit, it still doesn't seem like they would do that, which is a good thing. They're not playing that game.
It is really interesting, though, when you look at the difference between the Clinton administration, Obama administration, and then Trump. What happens with aerospace, though? Because Clinton, they had the stuff from the Disclosure Project. And then Obama had just this huge amount of aerospace work. Like, he really focused on that. And it makes you wonder if the documents you're going to reveal have something to do with that.
It will be interesting. And I think that along the lines of what just came out today, too, by Jack Brewer, who did the FOIA request to DIA, I've got a ton of FOIA requests on OSAP, which are still open. It's encouraging that some of this stuff is starting to come out now. So Jack got his today, from what I understand. And when you look at the material, it was very much aerospace based, not UFO based. Now, advanced aerospace, I'll give it that, but not paranormal slash UFO, UAP, the way we want to see it referenced. So what does that mean? I'm not really sure. Was OSAP supposed to be that aerospace research that was prevalent around this time frame, which all of the available public official documentation kind of supports, and the UFO stuff was injected from the commercial side, from the contractor side? I think the jury's still out on that. I know that it's not a popular stance to take, but you bring up an excellent point. There was a lot of research done around this era on aerospace, and they were looking at how they could advance that technology, and that's what OSAP, by the book, was supposed to be about.
Well, hopefully you're going to find out within the next, hopefully not 16 years.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for the work you do.
Well, you're very sweet. Yeah, thank you. Hopefully it's not when I'm 16. I just hope I'm alive by the time some of these documents come out. So I appreciate that.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Deb. You have a good night. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm not sure if that's a segue to the other story that I was going to do. We'll see if another call comes in. Sadly, my phone system has a lag between bringing in another call, so I'm not sure. Tell you what, if any of you are on hold right now, let me know what place you are in line. And in fact, I'll do that myself. My dad, when he called in, if you guys are into the behind the scenes shows, if you watched, he told me he was like 19 or 20 in line and he was on hold for like an hour. I had no idea. That's the other kind of shortcoming to what I do here is I can't see exactly who's on hold, but I do my best. Let me go ahead and pull in another call. Who's this?
Hi, this is Charlie in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Hey, Charlie, how are you?
Doing great, John. Pleasure to speak with you. I'm actually calling about the guest you had on the podcast with Dr. Lynn Kaitan.
Lynn Katai. Yeah, Kitai, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Katai, correct. I was actually in Phoenix in 1997. It's an experience I'll never forget. It was a Thursday. It was about 8:30 at night, and I had just gotten off work at the nursing home I was working at. I was driving back towards Scottsdale on East McDowell, and I saw the lights. I saw the Phoenix lights. I had never really seen anything like it. It was sort of like I remember seeing like 5 glowing red. They look like jack-o'-lanterns, to be honest with you. They look like hovering jack-o'-lanterns. At first, I thought they were like a blimp or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also got a lot of activity out of the Air Force up north. And it was just something that was just phenomenal. It was a real treasure to hear Dr. Lynn speak on that issue. I really appreciate that.
Well, good. I'm glad you got something out of the show. I think and hope more people, come forward with experiences like that. Not only the Phoenix Lights, but obviously this is something that people talk about. Have you ever come forward before and talk about it, or have you been kind of quiet about it?
Well, I mean, maybe like my kids after I had a few or something, but I'll be honest with you, John, ever since that experience, I've sort of tried to research a little bit on my own, and kind of makes you feel like you're crazy, and they say things like psyop and all that, but I don't know. I'm curious to know if you think if this thing was artificial or if the Phoenix Lights was extraterrestrial. I mean, it was huge. I mean, have you heard descriptions about just how it just hovered? It filled the entire sky almost. I mean, from where I was driving on McDowell, it was just across the whole horizon.
Yeah.
Do you think it was extraterrestrial or military, or what are your opinions on that?
I'm that kind of person that needs to see to believe, so I don't want this to seem like a cop-out. I wasn't there, so there's no way for me to really properly answer that to you, but I will add this. As a researcher of these types of events, stuff like that always intrigues me because my connection to it was I got the original Luke Air Force Base response when they were trying the aircraft flares and so on and so forth. And it's one of the very few times that in a FOIA response, which is right when the Pentagon was trying to pass off the flare explanation, it's one of the very few times in a FOIA request that they go kind of off script, so to speak, because it's very boilerplate language. And they told me that they had no idea where that theory came from, that Luke Air Force Base had, anything to do with this. And they said that there was no flights in the air that would account for what the Pentagon was trying to pass off. Now, that story has been amended since, but it's those amended stories that keep me intrigued because, look, if this was some mundane explanation, if it was some training exercise, that level of secrecy and, I'm sorry to say, stupidity of not being able to keep your story straight is indicative there is something else here. We're now at 2022. This was in 97. If this was some classified something, I would think maybe rumors would start. Maybe we wouldn't know the full truth, but at least have some kind of indicator like, oh, they have a craft that would fit this description. I know there's a balloon or something. I think Showtime. Yes, I know I was on the show, but I didn't play a role in this segment that they tried to maybe pass off or hint that it was a particular balloon or craft or something. I don't know. But it just didn't really hold water. So with all of that said, it keeps people like me intrigued because, no, I don't think it's a psyop or some kind of trickery or people who saw it are crazy. Rather, what I've learned, even though I can't tell you it's alien or not, what I've learned is there is a profound effect on the people that see this. And it's not one or two people that have told me that, but a lot. And I can add your name to the list because it seems like it really affected you. And that also is intriguing to me as someone who has not experienced that. So I appreciate you calling in and telling me that side of it.
John, there's absolutely no way that this was flares or even an aircraft.
I agree with you.
We don't have anything that big that flies that big. I mean, this thing was so big. It was bigger than Howard Stern's penis.
Oh, God, really? Is it that guy? It's a different number every time. Why? All right, dude. If you're listening, just check your LinkedIn. I mean, unless this is someone else, it didn't even sound like the guy anyway. Why? Why does he do it? Why does he do it? I don't know, but I'll save that. It's just frustrating, because nobody cares. Nobody cares about his stupid crank calls. Regardless, my points still stand. I thought the guy was genuine, but he's just that idiot, so who cares? Moving on. Who's this? Let me go ahead and pull on another call. Who's this?
Hi, this is Steven Padilla from Pasadena.
Hey, Steven, I know you're not going to talk about Howard Stern. How are you?
Good, my friend. Good, my friend. I came across an article last week, and maybe you could help interpret it for me. And then I have a question. This was happened last Tuesday. Biden signed a 2022 Intelligence Authorization Act, $1.5 trillion spending bill, and on this bill,
did I lose you, Stephen?
Yes, on this bill they have one where it's called data sharing on unidentified aerial phenomena, and in it, this is what they say. It says, after directing the establishment of the former Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Office as part of the FY22 NDAA, lawmakers directed more action on unidentified flying objects front in this year's intelligence bill. Specifically, the new law directs DNI and the Secretary of Defense to require that each element of the intelligence community and components of the Department of Defense with data relating to unidentified aerial phenomena make such data available immediately with Navy UAP Task Force as well as the National Air and Space Intelligence Center at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The bill also directs the UAP Task Force to AP Task Force or successor entity to report to Congress all new unidentified aerial phenomena events going forward. I was wondering maybe you could interpret that for me. Exactly, is this a new office that's going to be open? And
Sure. So in it gets a little bit complicated, and I don't pretend to understand the ins and outs of everything that's passed. To the best of my knowledge, with what has passed and kind of gotten pushed through and signed and so on, is that there will be a new office and new effort. Susan Goff has very briefly, she's, for those who don't know, the spokesperson that talks about these issues, apparently told another online blog, forgive me, I don't remember which one, but essentially she was saying it was kind of a slow process of getting up and running. I do believe that the UAP task force is still around. They still investigate UFOs. What these bills are doing is essentially ensuring that the intelligence community and those key players involved are sharing the information. And then on top of that, they're creating reports that will be on one side public and then on another side classified. Very similar to what we saw last June. The general public got a very generalized overview of the UAP issue and how many cases and so on. I think we learned a lot by learning a little, if that makes sense. And I believe that moving forward, that's what we should get used to. It's the classified stuff that's really going to have everything. And I think these bills are ensuring that the classified reports are going to be created, sent and submitted to Congress, and they're going to stay apprised of the information. What I think that there is false hope about is that this is some kind of, we're on the cusp of disclosure. And quite the opposite. I think that we're seeing more secrecy on UFOs, but we're hearing about them more, if that makes sense. And I think that they're giving the public what they want to hear. We're looking at UFOs. The military is taking it seriously. But when it comes down to sharing the information with the public, we get some statistics and we get a generalized report that is very difficult to really discern what exactly are we looking at. And there's, in my opinion, more questions than answers. So to the root of your question, I think that what we're seeing is now congressional interest, which is good. But I also think that we're seeing tighter secrecy. And I know that most people won't want to hear that in the UFO community, but where I back that up is the release I got through the Department of the Navy of what's called the Security Classification Guide for UAPs. And essentially what this is when a UAP report comes in that's either congressionally mandated, like what you're talking about, and the information that's being shared, when that data comes in, what do they do with it? How do they know what, like, is it classified? Is it not? What do we do? So these SCGs, or security classification guides, they essentially instruct the military arms to say, okay, that UAP report that just came in, it's automatically secret or automatically top secret, depending upon what category it is. And the majority of the SCG was all classified in itself, which shows you that this entire topic has a clamp down of secrecy on it, where they don't want the public to know. So it's great that congressional language is passed, and I think that that's a step in the right direction. I'm not taking away from that at all. But I think we also have to be realistic that these senators and congressmen, they have clearances for a reason. They don't go into a security briefing, get to know the truth about UAPs, and then come out and tell all the constituents. But rather, they tell their constituents, I'm taking care of it. I'm on top of this. And we had a classified briefing and we're taking it seriously. That's all they're saying. And I think we have to look at that and really be prepared that we're not going to get what we want. The congressional language you reference is great, but it all paves the way for the classified information to stay just that. There's no, that I've seen anyway, there's no declassification push by anybody in the language or in the halls of Congress. They're not sitting there saying, you need to declassify all of this. No, they're saying you need to be more transparent, but we're getting those reports, the one from June of last year. I'll still take those, don't get me wrong, but it's a far cry from them demanding everything be declassified.
would you be able to use FOIA to get the data that the task force would get and not share with us?
Yes, and that's an excellent question, and the answer is yes. So even though there's a clampdown of secrecy, the FOIA laws will allow the attempt to access it. Whether or not it still stays classified, that's to be determined. But a prime example of this, and it finally was confirmed through FOIA actually, was the 3 videos of the FLIR, the gimbal, and the Go Fast. And we've established that those were leaks, as much as people want to argue that. It just by definition was a leak. But on top of that, the FOIA, and I can give you a paper trail that goes over 2 years, pinned the military into a corner to release them. They did it proactively on their website. And then I got, about an hour after they did that, the final response to the Freedom of Information Act cases that I had filed. And they said, here you go. Why I'm bringing this up is that was essentially and arguably the precursor to a UAP task force. That information was kind of connected to internal bantering about UAPs and UFOs and the fact that those 3 videos represented just that. It was the FOIA that brought them out. And through FOIA, I got the internal communications, which showed them and showed all of us that the Freedom of Information Act was essentially pinning them into releasing that. Now broaden that. Now we have a solidified example that the FOIA brings out this material. I'm hoping that the UAP task force has more unclassified material, or if it's classified, they will consider declassifying once certain information is removed. So there's still avenues to get information, but it's very, very, very difficult. Simply because they don't want to share that stuff. They just don't. It took years to get them to release 3 videos that were already out, so what did it hurt them? I mean, you can easily look. I had established, this was the legal part of it, that they were unclassified. That's how I knew I pinned them legally, that there was no way they can withhold it. They could maybe do a stretch of some FOIA exemption on unclassified material, but that was a stretch. So the Navy had denied me on a later request access to any UFO videos and photographs because they said everything was classified. I appealed that and won, which means that the higher, what they call appellate authority at the Navy, and I'm sorry I'm getting a little technical here, but the point is solid. The appellate authority looked at the decision the Navy gave me and of denying everything and saying, nope, sorry, John, you can't have a single photo or video because it's classified. I put up a case that said, no, you can't do that. And the appellate authority looked at it at JAG. They looked at it and said, no, you guys can't do it. We agree with John. And they remanded the request back, and that's being processed. That was a huge, huge, huge win, which means they will do their darndest to keep the secrecy, but FOIA can chisel it away, albeit maybe a little bit at a time, but it has been something that has produced results, and it's continuing to produce results. So those I wanted to give you some real world examples that I'm not just making it up as I go and giving you false hope that FOIA can do something. There is a proven track record that FOIA can get this information out, and it's making headway even as we speak on additional material that the Navy wanted to keep secret, but a higher authority, an appellate authority is what they're called, said, no, you can't do that. So we're going to see how that plays out. So I still got some tricks in my bag that hopefully will help us out.
Wonderful. I was fortunate enough to see you last week from the LA Law Library on how to put in FOIA. And I wanted to ask a question, but I didn't get through. This is my question. ATAP, when Luis Elizondo had his task force there, how did that sneak under FOIA? How come we didn't know about it? Do you have to know when you put a FOIA request what you're going specifically for, or just like, you got anything on UFOs or something? I mean, how did that get through without us knowing about it?
You're talking about ATIP, the
Yes.
UFO program as a whole?
Yes.
Okay.
Because because we did not know about it until it came out. Leslie Keane came out with it, and it would have been 12 years, and nobody knew about it. And I was just curious, how did that get under the radar, and with FOIA not get it? When you request for it, do you have to have known that was existing to get data or documents?
So
am I making sense of my question?
No, absolutely no. I follow you. So when you file a request, you do have to be specific enough. If you're too broad, they'll kick it back. So if you say, give me everything you have on UFOs, some agencies will take it, others will not. According to Mr. Elizondo's testimony, though, ATIP was highly secretive and dealt with UFOs where very few people knew about it. So if that part is true, which it could be, then when you file the FOIA request, if a lot of FOIA officers just don't have access to it, and then when they reach out and they're doing research with the different commands or the different offices that may have responsive records, if they don't know about it, then they come back with a no records response, and it just kind of flies under the radar. So FOIA is not perfect, and I'm not here to argue that it is. What I kind of have trouble with is we're seeing this start to come out with documentation on OSAP, which, according to legend and lore, is the beginning days of what ultimately turned into ATIP, that there's no indicator that this was supposed to be a paranormal or UFO-related program. So what do we do then? I mean, are we just going to accept that this was all operating in secret and the documents aren't there? Or maybe were these efforts something that weren't necessarily official efforts? I'll give you a prime example. I didn't record this video on the behind the scenes. I will if I don't do it tonight, and I probably won't. I'm running out of time. But I received a letter through FOIA that Luis Elizondo sent the Pentagon. And in this letter, he essentially says, let me pull it up really quick. Here, hold on. Bear with me, Stephen. You may not be able to see it on your screen, but I'll read it to you really quick. For you guys watching on the behind the scenes, I'll do a more full video on this. Let me see if I can. Bear with me here, Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find it in here. This is a letter that he wrote. Here it is. Okay. If you guys can see this. Again, I'd do it a little bit more fluid if it was a video, so that's why I'm kind of doing it on the fly here. So back to what I was saying, that if it wasn't necessarily an officially sanctioned program or something that a lot of people knew about, right here, Mr. Elizondo calls it an activity. He says, call it an activity versus a program, if you will. But if this escalates it, it will be easy to prove how active I remained in support of our men and women in uniform. This was written in June of 2019. Within a couple days, I believe, if memory serves, June 1 was when the Pentagon had submitted their thing out that Luis Elizondo had no assigned responsibilities on ATIP and that whole controversial hoopla. Within days, he wrote this letter. So we went from ATIP being this secret Pentagon UFO study that had $22 million to it was an activity of his inside the Pentagon. I'm not trying to diminish what his efforts were, but rather this is how Mr. Elizondo frames it as an activity versus essentially a program, which is definitely not the story that I read 1,000 times over in the media. Why am I bringing this up? Well, it plays into answering your question. If it was an activity of his where he felt that there was a need to protect the fellow men and women in uniform, which is incredibly admirable. I have nothing bad to say about that. But if this was something that he did on the side, in addition to his other efforts and programs that he did work on, then, it kind of explains why it would be overlooked, because nothing was essentially on the books. When or if documentation comes out to support the story we've been told 1,000 times over in the media, hey, I'll be the first to profile it. But this type of find definitely sheds a different light on what ATIP was, being an activity versus this secret Pentagon UFO study. So in the eyes of the FOIA, would it see this an activity of somebody that really wasn't official? Probably not. But there are ways then to do email searches on email boxes. So if, let's say, you do a FOIA request on Luis Elizondo's emails for the word unidentified, which I did, then you wouldn't have to know about the program or the activity, or you can call it whatever you want. If he was sending emails in and out with a word called identified in it, it would yield a response. That was one of the requests that showed me all of his stuff was deleted. So that's obviously a dead end. So I didn't mean to go on too long, Stephen, but it's a very complex answer when it comes to the FOIA and what really are we dealing with. And that's why I've been skeptical about a lot of this stuff since about 2018, because if we don't frame it correctly, we won't be able to find any supporting evidence whatsoever. Once we can frame it correctly, then we can really figure out how to formulate the FOIA requests and so on, because sometimes the broad stroke fishing expeditions where you say, give me everything on OSAP isn't going to get you exactly what you want. So
do you think keeping it under activity was intentional to keep it secret where it could be hidden?
You know,
Well, you could.
I personally, and this is just an opinion, it doesn't make sense to me to do that. Simply because when you want to keep something secret within the U.S. military and government, you can. And you can keep it secret for a very long time. I know that secrets come out. I know leaks happen and so on and so forth. But you're talking about something that was not heavily classified. When I'm using the documents that came out just today from the Defense Intelligence Agency on OSAP. If this really was a secret paranormal study that then spawned ATIP with Luis Elizondo, why was the majority of the material unclassified still? The only classified anything related to OSAP were 2 of the reports it generated, simply because it was dealing with technology that had classified aspects to it. Other than that, everything was unclassified. And just for clarity, that's not declassified, that's unclassified. It held no classification whatsoever. So what's going on? Because we're told it's this heavily secretive program, but as more and more come out about it, we're not really seeing that. So if they really wanted to keep it secret, they could. They're called special access programs. They could absolutely slam this thing into secrecy mode for decades to come. And maybe my son would find out when he's my age what it was all about. But that's not what happened here. And that's what's kind of, it keeps me skeptical. You know, I call it a healthy skepticism. I'm still eager to find out the truth, but I'm skeptical just simply because what I've seen with real classified programs spanning back 70 plus years, going back even to World War I, and you look at those formally classified documents and programs and technology research and all sorts of stuff. I mean, I've got 3 million pages of material to read away from UFOs. When you look at that and then you button that up against what we think or what we want ATIP to be, it doesn't match up. It just doesn't smell right. It just doesn't. Because you usually see common trends with heavily secretive or heavily classified programs. This is different. It just doesn't jive in that way. It doesn't mean that it's all a lie or a smokescreen. It just means we have a lot of unanswered questions that we still don't know the answers to.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate that. I got a better understanding.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your call, Stephen. I really appreciate it. And thank you. And thank you all as I go through the detailed answers. Sometimes, and Stephen's a great caller. He's always got great questions. Sometimes it's not always easy to answer a lot of these questions in 2 or 3 words, simply because it is incredibly complex. So yeah, that's why it's a little bit, hold on one second here. I'm trying to see where I am in line here. Okay. All right. So I think I've got most of the calls out. Let me see here. And I'm going to have to round it down here because I got to go to pick up my son from soccer practice. My wife is over there with him. see a question here. Jay Salem, is it possible to filter a FOIA request by metadata, for instance, prioritizing video files or emails with attachments, etc.? Yes, it is. That's a great question. That's a way to whittle down requests. Again, you just try and find the happy medium of not whittling it down too much to where you don't get what you want versus keeping it too broad and it's too long of a wait. The problem, too, is sometimes, let's say, I don't have a confirmation that within the Obama files, if this is what you're referring to, that there are videos or photos. They've only been talking about mostly pages, either physical or the digital files, which comprise over 130,000 pages. Does that have videos and photos? I'm not really sure. I will say, however, if it did, and it's what we want, right? It's the Navy videos, there's photographs and so on. They would not be what's called the release authority. And so it may make sense to just say, okay, I amend the request for only videos and photos. Give me only that. Well, what happens is that they're not a release authority on that. If it's a Navy video, then the Navy's the release authority. So maybe the White House staff was shared a video, if that's why it's there. If it's an Air Force video, then the Air Force is the release authority. What that means is that information transfers back to that agency or military branch. You get a new FOIA case number. You're that point in line and you start over. Why I don't want to say I amend it only to photos and videos is, number one, I have requests that are still open with all the other military branches that would generate these photos and videos. But number two, it closes that case then because they've fulfilled it. They've forwarded out the photos and videos to what are called the OCAs, the original classifying authorities / the release authority, and they're done. Your case closed. So that is kind of, although sounds like a good idea, it comes back to bite you. Another thing that if you take a hatchet, this is a little note for FOIA people out there. If you take a hatchet to your request and just say, okay, I omit A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way down to L, and then give me this. Well, if you whittled all that stuff down and you said, give me this, and they have nothing, what happens? Close the request. You got to no records. You got to start over. So I've had that happen where I've had a year or two lapse on a case, and they say, well, can you round it down? I go, okay, great. Yeah, sure. Why don't you tell you what, let's amend it for all of this. And I switch the angle of it a little bit or hone in on one specific topic. And they write back within like a day and they go, sorry, we got no records. And you realize, oh my God, I just wasted 2 years of my life with this request. You whittled it down and you did it too much. So it can come back and bite you. So those efforts, albeit are strong, in this particular case, it would not be fruitful because you would essentially just have them forwarded out to another agency and they would close the case. So it wouldn't help you. So hopefully that'll answer your question there. Michael Kent, definitive disclosure will come from private sector projects like Galileo, not the U.S. government. I don't necessarily disagree, Michael. However, you're getting a lot of former government involvement in those private efforts now. So at what point, maybe, is that a bad idea? Where then that information is either maybe shared with the U.S. government. And if something of true scientific note comes out, and this is from the pages of Contact and Carl Sagan, would the government come in and classify it? I would prefer, I've seen Avi Loeb's team and advisor lists and so on grow considerably since I interviewed him on this channel. I was disheartened to see that. When I talked to him, he really wanted to, it sounded like, stay small, stay into a scope where there was no government involvement, but we've kind of branched out from that. And that's what's kind of, I think, disheartening for me, because then you do open up that possibility that if they find something in the interest of national security, let's say a revelation of some kind is determined to be a threat to national security, if released, would they come in and squash it? I would say yes. I believe that they would. I believe national security would trump scientific endeavors. So if there's, too many names on that list, which I think there are, that may come back to bite him. Avi's a much smarter guy than I am, though, so I'm sure he's got his ideas and how he's going to do it. But regardless, I do fear that a little bit. Patrick, John, I bet these guys make the wait so long on purpose so that some people may give up requesting info. Yes, that is one of the tactics, I believe. Is it the tactic here? I'm not sure. I think that they're still trying to get their feet wet a little bit in the FOIA arena. I'm not sure if you listened earlier in the program, but I gave the idea that they need to start pushing back, because if the numbers that they're giving me, they've got 4.3 whatever million pages that they have to review before mine, but that 4.3 million pages need to be reviewed to only fulfill 85 or so requests. That doesn't make sense. When you're too broad like that, if you file a request and it yields like 300,000 pages, they'll kick it back to you and say, hey, this is too broad. Or you can put up an argument and say, I'll pay it. I'll pay your research and review time if that's applicable. I'll pay the reproduction fees. And yeah, there are organizations that have those bank accounts. I'm not one of them. But that's generally how that process works out. But it's few and far between where an agency can say, okay, well, you've got 250,000 responsive pages, at a 15 cents a page or whatever, if they're going to print it out, or they still charge you for electronic files. There's not a whole lot of requesters that can say, yeah, no problem. Send me the bill. It's not a big deal. So, I think they need to learn that process a little bit of pushing back and not accepting all these very broad stroked requests. And again, I put myself in that category. If they come back to me and they say, hey, 130,000 pages and the 20,000 digital files is too much. Okay, great. Then I'll work with them even more and try and whittle it down. But that is an instance where they do work with you more in hopes to whittle it down. So I think that in this case doesn't apply. Other agencies absolutely do that. The thing that drives any FOIA requester nuts is something called a still interested letter. And the still interested letter is sometimes you wait a year or 2 years or 5 years, and then you get a response from the agency and they say, this is in response to your case from 2015. It's been a long time, so we're just seeing if you're interested. You have 30 days to respond. If we don't hear from you, we close the case. And it's like they've had 5 years to just do whatever they want. And then they give you 30 days to respond, or they will close the case. Department of Justice has said that they shouldn't do that. They still do. For me, it's all part of the game, because then if the case closes, you miss the email, it goes into your spam box, or you're on vacation, or you're just behind, whatever that is, it goes over the 30 days, you're in the back of the line. It's really, really frustrating when that happens. All right, let me take a couple more here. Yeah, never mind. Sorry. I'm not crying. I've had, sadly, allergies. I'm reading this. So they haven't found anything yet. So all those pilots are what? Confused? Oh, yeah, it might be secret military tech. We have cracked anti-gravity propulsion and didn't tell the Navy. Frost, just because it's hard for me to follow all the comments, that may not be directed to me, but I will pull it I hope you don't mind. Simply because I think this is a point that I have found myself in the middle of the controversy, namely that Showtime documentary, where I have said that, yes, there is a possibility that some of this technology that is being bantered about right now is classified military tech. Namely, I floated that idea. I didn't say definitively, although my biggest haters say that I did. But you all can look at it. I do call it a possibility. In fact, some of the men and women that wear uniforms that were there have also cited that possibility that this was classified technology. There's nothing wrong with bringing that up. I think that in order for us to just completely omit it, we need to have something very definitive. And right now we don't have it. We have a lot of eyewitness testimony, which is great, but we don't have the data. A lot of that was said to be taken, so on and so forth. That would help solidify this, but we just don't have it. So does that mean that it's classified tech? Well, in my mind, if the story are true, I believe it was Patrick Hughes that said this on the Nimitz encounter, that U.S. Navy ship, they capture whatever this tic-tac is on their technology, and the United States Air Force came in, confiscated the bricks, and away they went. To me, yes, that is something that is indicative that they captured a signature of a classified piece of technology? Why was the Air Force so close by? Why was it the Air Force? And why would they come in and take the data? I mean, Patrick has, and all Navy personnel has these either oaths or either clearances or NDAs, whatever they may be, that's pertinent to the story. But regardless, they all have these types of agreements. You don't just come out and start talking about your experience on the Nimitz or the Carl Vinson or the Omaha or wherever. And I've tried to interview Navy personnel unrelated to UFOs on, let's say, the History Channel. And you have to go through a lot of hoops to get these people to talk to you, even on stuff that's not controversial, especially if they're going to be wearing a uniform. So I believe it's a possibility, and I think we all need to accept that. Doesn't mean that it was. It could absolutely still be alien, but I think that there's too much to just dismiss all that possibility and go, oh, you know what, the pilots would be trained to see that, so they would. So let's get beyond this classified tech. Well, it doesn't mean that the pilots were read in. The men and women flying in the F-18s on U.S. Navy carriers and so on are the best of the best. There's no doubt about it. They're highly trained, highly intelligent, and I'm glad they're on my team. But at the end of the day, they're not read into everything either. And although they're not sitting here with me and I'm not speaking for them, I would respectfully argue that they would agree with that too. That they would say, yeah, you know, sometimes we're just not read into everything that's going on. I am sure that they would have something to say if they felt that they were being put in danger on a classified test. So, you know, I'm sure that would come out of their mouth. But in the same respect, we can't expect them to know everything that has been flying in the sky in or around or near them in all of these different exercises. So I think that that's all a big possibility, and I stress that word. And hopefully you didn't mind me pulling your comment, because again, I always wind up in some of the banter about this, because when Showtime did a piece, they used my stance on this, that although I am not here to tell you, yes, it was classified tech, I believe that there is a possibility that some of this was. You look at some of the other cases that have leaked out, that they're called unidentified aerial phenomena, but they're very, very closely depicting a drone or that type of technology, you know, ghosting a ship somehow. So how does that work? And when you look at those types of events, what does that tell you? Are we dealing with either a foreign entity that's spying on us? Are we dealing with some kind of classified piece of technology to see how the U.S. Navy could identify it, chase it, catch it? What better way to test a U.S. Air Force technology than against the greatest Navy on the planet, which is the U.S. Navy? So what better way? And I had asked the Pentagon that. Full disclosure, they said they wouldn't do it. Do we want to believe the Pentagon now, but not on the other ones? So if the Pentagon lies then are they lying now? Are they misleading the general public on how they do these types of operations? And I would say, in the interest of national security, they absolutely could. And that's a different video in itself. But the counterintelligence value to this entire topic and how it ties into the Nimitz encounter and the Omaha encounter and all that stuff, how it ties in, I believe that it's all related. But again, that's a different story entirely. All right, so that said, I really appreciate all of the phone calls and you guys joining me for the behind the scenes, all of the super chats. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I'll say it again. This channel is possible because of you. It goes right into making these types of videos, the better cut videos and pieces, but also the research itself, which can get expensive. So thank you to all of that. If you're not watching live, there are other ways that you can support the site. The biggest way, hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you share the videos, those that you like, and check out the channel. This was a behind the scenes. These are fun extra videos that I do just to interact with the audience and have a little bit more fun. So I appreciate you all taking the time to join me in doing that. But check out some of the other more cut and professionally done, professionally in quotes, but more structured pieces that you can watch. Those are all over the channel. But most of all, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Turn the notifications on, because the next time I go live or premiere a video, that way you won't miss out. So thank you all again for joining me on a behind the scenes. I will try to make it not 3 more months before the next one, but I always have a great time with these. When I press go live, I never think anybody's going to be here. And here we are still with hundreds of you still in the room hearing me rant my goodbye. So I'll do it more often. Thank you all again. This is John Greenwald Jr. signing off, and we'll see you next time.